Chapter 366 Together for Eternity. In the Curse Continent, within the Moonlight Empire, people filled the streets, celebrating a joyous occasion. The Holy Emperor, founder of the Moonlight Empire, exited from seclusion. Grandpa, can you tell us about the Holy Emperor? A child asked curiously. The Holy Emperor? Higgin repeated. In the street, a nascent mage named Higgin couldn't help but reminisce. Most of the people from 1,000 years ago had already died. Due to limited talent, even with abundant resources, there was only so much they could achieve. Haggard was lucky to possess Tier 3 talent, barely becoming a nascent mage with a lifespan of 1,000 years. Combined with various life extensions, it could be said that he witnessed the rise of the Moonlight Empire from the ground. The Holy Emperor. He is the omnipotent emperor who raised the most barren continent in the Ethereum realm to the economic center of the world, Higgins said emotionally. The Moonlight Empire now was vastly different from his memories. From hundreds of quadrillions, there were now over 100 quintillion individuals living on the continent at all times. Of course, these weren't all the people of the Moonlight Empire. About 30% of the individuals living in the empire were from 3 continents. As the economic center of the world, it could be said that the Moonlight Empire was more prosperous than ever. However, upon hearing Higgins' words, the children around him showed expressions of disbelief. Grandpa, you're wrong. The reason the empire became the economic center of the world is because of His Majesty Liam and the Moonlight Commerce Leader, His Excellency Lux, one child said. The Moonlight Empire had many free educational institutions, ensuring everyone was literate. History could be freely browsed, thus even the children knew a bit about who contributed to the rise of the Moonlight Empire. So what? Isn't His Majesty Liam and His Excellency Lux the sons of the Holy Emperor? Without a good environment and resources provided by the Holy Emperor, their achievements wouldn't be as great as they are now, Higgins sneered. Although Higgin was ignorant about the core secrets of the empire, he knew who still contributed the most. Earning $1 million from zero was the hardest. Much less raising an empire from the ground, this was almost an impossible task. Yet the Holy Emperor did it all without the slightest problem. He still remembered when he was a child. Although the empire was not as prosperous now, all the benefits they received were incomparable to the present. Back then, he could receive a crystal credit per day just by existing. Now, although the empire was more prosperous than ever, he didn't receive anything. With such a huge population, they no longer had subsidies. To have money, one needed to work hard. Fortunately, there were more jobs than people. As long as you are not lazy, living decently is easy. There were also many relief stations for poor people, ensuring they would never die of hunger or cold. You don't know in the past? Telling of the benefits they received 1,000 years ago, even the adults listening to his story were in awe. From daily subsidies, education encouragement bonuses, free houses, low-priced land, tax-free policies, unlimited credit borrowing, etc. After hearing all of these, they felt that the current prosperous empire was no longer as appealing. Most of the adults around felt that these old people had it easy. No wonder those top families rose to unprecedented heights they could only imagine. They felt that if they had had this kind of opportunity, they would also rise and become a noble family. Seeing that they were daydreaming, Higgin just sneered. In every era, there is always an opportunity to rise. Although there are not as many free benefits now as before, there are also more opportunities than ever. As long as one has a bit of talent and opportunity, they can have everything they want. Shaking his head, Higgin continued to tell the legend about the Holy Emperor. Meanwhile, in the imperial castle, Maximus tirelessly coaxed his wives and children. Husband, my hand hurts, Hazel muttered. What? Let me see. Teleporting beside Hazel, he carefully massaged her hands. Is that better? Oh, I don't know, Hazel pouted, with a smile in her eyes. Maximus Shadowcrest, come here, the food you cooked is unpalatable. Erica yelled as if summoning a servant. Wait, dear. Maximus said hurriedly. How about now, does it still hurt? It's fine, go fix the food. How dare you cook us unpalatable food? Hazel said, rolling her eyes. Yes, I will do better. This should change the taste of food for a while. Maximus said, kissing Hazel on the lips. How dare you take advantage of me? Hazel said, pinching Maximus's nose. Maximus, where are you? Stop flirting there. Erica yelled again. Go, Sister Erica couldn't wait any longer. Hazel chuckled. Going to the kitchen, he saw Erica busy adding ingredients to the pot. What's wrong with the food I cooked? Hugging her from behind, he whispered in her ear. There is no soul in it. Did you condense it with manna? Erica turned her head to her husband. Yes, I tasted it just earlier, the taste is perfect, Maximus said doubtfully. The food he condensed has a transcendence taste. Maximus was sure that if a mortal could eat it, they would be enlightened, rising multiple tears. What do you know? What we want is not something delicious, what we want is your sincerity. Now, slice all the ingredients on the table, and don't you dare use any manna. Erica yelled. Yes, ma'am. After cutting the ingredients with sweat and tears, Maximus was finally let go by Erica. Looking around, he saw Sky was in a daze looking outside. Sky was probably the least affected by his seclusion. As long as Sky knew he was safe, she wouldn't mind waiting for millions of years, much less a mere 1,000 years. On the path of transcendence, it's natural not to see each other for a long time. As long as you have each other in your heart, it doesn't matter how long you don't see each other. Sky, don't you miss me? Maximus asked, hugging Sky and placing her in his lap. I missed you, Sky said, turning her head to him. Then how about you kiss me? Peck. Tasting the sweetness, Maximus felt it was not enough. I can't feel your sincerity, Maximus said looking at her lips. You. Seeing her shameless husband, Sky couldn't do anything but comply. Maximus was also eager, tasting the dessert in advance. Having had enough sweetness, he turned his attention to his other wives. While walking, he saw Luna and Livia whispering to each other secretly. Sneaking around, he overheard them planning a surprise for him. Can I see it now? Maximus asked, shocking them. What are you doing here? Luna said, dragging his ears in annoyance. Now there's no longer a surprise. Livia pouted. I don't need a surprise, I just need you two. Maximus said, taking the two into his arms. Feeling his warmth, Luna and Livia smiled sweetly. But we still need to perform later. We would be glad to hear you play some music and dance. However, Maximus leaned in closer to their ears and whispered some explicit things. You shameless. They yelled, blushing greatly. Ha ha ha. Maximus just laughed and quickly exited the room. As he walked around, he stumbled and saw his daughters and granddaughters having a tea party. Based on the topic, it seemed they were already contemplating how to make his life difficult. After all, as a father who took 1,000 years to buy milk, he needed to be punished. Seeing him eavesdropping on their conversation, they were shocked and angry. That? No cheating. You can't be here. That's right, Grandpa, this is a girl's talk. You're not talking about any guys, are you? Maximus asked jokingly, with a hint of seriousness. This is his beautiful daughters and granddaughters. Maximus couldn't bear to part with them. What are you talking about, Dad? We'll only love you. That's right, Grandpa, don't be too sour. We still didn't see anyone as handsome as you. My daughters and granddaughters could only love him. He thought jokingly. Although he knew that this day would come, he forcibly erased it from his mind. Ha ha ha, then you'll die an old witch. Maximus laughed in satisfaction. What witch? We would always be your princesses, Dad. Yes, princess is better, witch is ugly. Then you'll forever be my princesses. Walking around the castle, he coaxed his wives, children, and grandchildren one by one. No matter their requests, Maximus was like a genie who would grant the moon and sun to them. After the banquet was prepared, the whole family sat across the table. Lilith and Freya were also at the table, joining the banquet. As for Pheolon, that stubborn old man didn't want to see him at all. Accompanied by his family at the table, the smile on his face was uncontrollable. This is his family, the reason for his continued existence. He couldn't imagine what life would be like without them. Looking at them, he took a deep breath. We may not be together all the time, but I promise that I will be with you until the end of times. Chapter 367 Recounting Events. A few months later, after indulging in sweetness and satisfying his family, Maximus finally had the time to recount what had happened in the past 1,000 years. Although he had been back to the Ethereum realm for over 10 years, his foolish self hadn't bothered with his surroundings. Tintin, Maximus called. Tintin was the spirit token given to him when he became a core student at Origin Arcana Institute. After many modifications, Tintin had already reached the peak Tier 9 spirit treasure. Even so, due to his soaring strength and abilities, Tintin didn't have much use. Fortunately, Maximus was not so cruel as to disregard Tintin. When he created the Ether Tower, Maximus integrated Tintin into it, making the tower her main body. Now Tintin was equivalent to a spirit controlling a continental server. A hello, host. Tintin's spirit condensed, greeting him with excitement. You've become more lively, Maximus praised, patting her head. It's thanks to Sir Lux. He upgraded my body. Now I can go wherever I want in the Ethereum realm. Tintin said. Tintin was now comparable to the main token, having the body of a continental server. Outside, Tintin was called the Astral Goddess. As for the spirits of the other 3 continents, they were called the Arcane Goddess, the Celestial Goddess, and the Primal Goddess. They, the 4 goddesses, were the rulers of the Ethernet permeating around the Ethereum realm. It can be said that even the apex sovereigns and the world's will were below them in Ethernet. Fortunately, they were absolutely impartial, only following the orders of their creator. When it came to the current trends of the world, it could be said that these 4 goddesses were omniscient. After all the information in the world passed through them, from the daily notes of a mortal to the discussions of apex sovereigns. Unless it's an absolute secret, these 4 goddesses knew everything. After playing with Tintin, Maximus began to ask about the situation while he was away. What do you want to know, host? The Abyss? The Ethereum realm? Your empire? Tell me about the Abyss first. The Abyss, well, the Abyss was vastly different now. In the past, it was a world catastrophe, requiring even the sacrifice of the whole Nexus continent. Now, with the resources from Myriad World Mall, the Abyss became our backyard for resources. As the main assistant of Lux, Tintin also knew about the Myriad World Mall. After all, to manage his store that sells and exports the whole Ethereum realm's resources, Lux couldn't do it by himself. With Tintin managing everything, Lux just needed to point the way, and he could sit back and relax. We have already captured the boundary layer and middle layer. The process of capturing the purgatory layer was also going smoothly. According to our estimate, we only need a few million to an epoch to capture the Abyss. As long as nothing extraordinary happens, the Abyss is in our bag. Tintin said excitedly. Is that so? Maximus muttered doubtfully. He didn't expect that the Abyss was suppressed to this extent. Just a few resources can already bring it down to its knees. However, he knew this was not the end. Looking at the details directly sent to him by Tintin, he concluded that the Abyss monarchs were plotting something. Either the dimensional teleportation array is about to finish accumulating energy, or they found a way to deal with the parasites eroding the Abyss. Either way, the Abyss was becoming more dangerous in his eyes. What about the Ethereum realm? Are there any big changes besides the continental servers? No, the Ethereum realm is still as it should be. Besides the increase in trade and connection, there's not much change. I see. Maximus nodded in understanding. After the Ethereum realm had undergone countless epochs, what changes hadn't it witnessed? Furthermore, 1,000 years is still too little to change anything. Even if the Ethernet was available throughout the Ethereum realm, how many people could afford a device that could access it? Other continents are not as generous as him, directly giving a free device to his citizens. What about the Moonlight Empire? The Moonlight Empire can be said to have the biggest change in the Ethereum realm. First is the population, which reached 100 quintillion, catching up to most populous domains in the Arcane continent. Unfortunately, the cost to maintain such a huge population reached a few sextillion dimensional coins every year. What about the income? Are the expenses still out of pocket? The income mostly comes from the Myriad World Mall. Most of the resources produced by the Moonlight Empire are sold there. Unfortunately, it's still not enough to sustain the empire. Despite the efforts of Excellency Liam, the Moonlight Empire seems to be an endless pit that couldn't be filled. Tintin sighed, remembering countless days and nights Liam had to work to manage the empire. If not for the ministers and her assistants, Liam may have already collapsed by now. Maximus sighed. 1,000 years later, the Moonlight Empire was still in the negative. Although they could earn income from other ways like the Ethereum realm merits and amalgamation of will. It was still embarrassing to hear that the empire was still operating in deficit. However, he also understood. After all, to grow the population to 100 quintillion, massive resources are indispensable. From hundreds of quadrillions to over 100 quintillion. Although it might seem like it's only 100 times, the thought and work put into it was immeasurable. To make the growth index greatly surpass the lost index, perfect policies, strength, reputation, environment, protection, everything needed to be considered. No wonder Liam needed to spend a few sextillion every year just to maintain the empire. What about becoming the economic center of the world? Is that accurate? This was just the boastful imagination of the people of the Moonlight Empire. Although the Moonlight Empire indeed receives tens of quintillions of visitors every year, it is by no means the economic center of the world, Tintin said, rolling her eyes. Economic center of the world? It couldn't even feed itself? How dare it call itself the economic center of the world? Furthermore, the market was only artificially boosted with resources bought from the Myriad World Mall. Without it, the Moonlight Empire was barely comparable to the top domains in the Arcane Continent.
Ha ha ha, I see, Maximus chuckled.
It seems that the Moonlight Empire was at peace for so long that its people became a little arrogant. It looks like they needed a little stimulation. Planning in his mind, he continued to ask Tintin about what happened to the Shadowhunter Guild. The Shadowhunter Guild is already one of the top guilds in the world. When it comes to wealth ranking, it's in the top 10, becoming a veritable plutocratic guild. As for strength, the guild has 15 apex sovereigns, reaching the top 100 in terms of strength.
So many?
Did the reborn apex sovereigns join the guild? Maximus asked. Yes, Excellency Liam managed to convince them to join the guild. TSK, I wonder how that brat fooled those powerhouses, Maximus muttered with a smile. After recounting the events that happened in the past 1,000 years, Maximus turned his attention to his origin. A few months passed, and his origin started to crack again. The erosion power of the River of Law was too strong. Even though only a little wisp passed through his origin, it still managed to greatly affect him. Running through his cultivation manual, he began to repair his origin. As he was repairing it, he noticed his origin seemed to be more solid. Is the River of Law tempering my origin? Thinking of this, there was enlightenment in his eyes. The River of Law was merely too strong for him. However, as the power that only a tier 11 can possess, how can it not be beneficial? Just a few wisps already enhance his origin to this degree. What about more? Maybe his origin would mutate and evolve? Unfortunately, it's not something he could try now. If he is not careful, he may directly die. This is real death, not something his ultimate cultivation technique can resurrect. After all, he was only at tier 8 realm. His origin still hadn't reached self-cycle, becoming independent to the origin of dimensions. Maximus concluded he should be able to reach this state at tier 10. At that time, he would be truly immortal. Nothing could kill him. The world can be destroyed, but not him. This is already ahead of Sky's ultimate physique of immortality. After all, if the source of the ultimate dimensional physique got destroyed, she would also die. For him, after reaching tier 10, nothing can bind him anymore. This is also the horror of ultimate cultivation techniques. There can be hundreds of thousands of ultimate physiques, but less than 1,000 ultimate cultivation techniques. Well, at least that's what he thought. After all, an ultimate physique is based on the origin of law. With a few combinations, it can even reach millions and billions. As for ultimate cultivation techniques, they're unique, artificially created by living beings. Furthermore, an ultimate physique can only guarantee one to reach tier 11. However, an ultimate cultivation technique can have one reach tier 12. Thinking of his next plan, he continued to reinforce the barrier of his origin. Chapter 368 Independent Learning Consciousness. A few days later, in the backyard.
Thud. Harder.
What happened to you? Have you become soft?
Bam.
Punching out, Max flew out disgracefully. Dad, you must be cheating.
Max shouted pitifully.
They were in an equalizer array. His father should also have a mortal strength. However, the strength and speed shown by his father could even match that of a tier 3 knight. What do you know? This is moving with the laws of the world, Liam, watching from the side, said. If one mastered the essence of law, no matter how suppressed they were still invincible. Unless his father was suppressed that he couldn't move, Max had no way of defeating his father. That's still cheating. Max was unwilling and called out again.
Alright, enough.
Maximus yelled. He was initially exercising, trying to regain full control of his soaring strength. Seeing his father training, Max couldn't help but be itchy and challenge him to spar. Seeing Max crying like a child, Maximus felt ashamed. Manipulating the equalizer array, Max's strength went up to tier 5.
Is this enough?
Dad, this is plenty enough, Max laughed, feeling his strength. Thinking that he could beat his father into submission, he couldn't help but laugh.
Come.
Unfortunately, to his disappointment, his father is still his father. Fighting him, he felt that his body was not his. Max even checked if his body was shorter, thinner, or cursed. Every time he attacked his father, instead of hitting, he was being hit instead.
No more, no more.
Max quickly surrendered. Seeing Max, Liam chuckled. Fighting with his father is only asking for a beating. He couldn't even feel the depth of his father's strength. How could Max, a mere tier 8 realm, be a match? Feeling that he could already control 99% of his strength, Maximus stopped.
Are you ready?
Maximus asked, turning his attention to Liam. Is this really necessary, father? Liam asked with a frown.
Why not?
The Empire needs you. If possible, I would even directly pass the throne to you, Maximus said with a smile. Seeing that Liam was managing the Empire without a problem, Maximus planned to pass him the throne of the Moonlight Empire. Unfortunately, after hearing this, the ministers and generals would rather die than accept it. Maximus was their faith. Although their emperor didn't do anything, as long as they knew he was there, they felt they could pass through anything. Maximus didn't want to disappoint them, so he relented. However, appointing Liam as the crown prince is still necessary. Although it may not be of much use, it would increase the cohesion of the people and the officials.
Just accept it, brother.
You've been managing the empire for hundreds of years. Being a crowned prince is just a transition, Max said.
But
Liam still worried that his brother and sister would disagree.
Don't think too much.
No one wants to manage the empire besides you, Maximus said, understanding Liam's thoughts. Are you worried about us, brother? Max said, finally understanding Liam's worry. Liam just stood in silence, looking at him. Ha, you're really a joker, brother. Max said forcefully, patting him.
The throne?
What would he need that for? Thinking that her brother nearly went bald managing the empire, Max couldn't help but shudder. His wife still liked his dashing appearance more. Brother, you don't need to worry about us. We don't have interest in management. Hearing this, Liam finally calmed down.
Yeah.
After the appointing Liam as the crown prince, the empire went into celebration. Although most of the citizens knew it was just a formality, they were still excited. They felt His Majesty Liam's efforts were finally seen. Although he was not as generous as their holy emperor, he was much more responsible and stable. After settling the empire, Maximus sought the sweetness of the world in the arms of his wives. He no longer needed to go into seclusion. His ultimate cultivation manual could automatically fill the missing energy needed to reach Tier 9. Regarding study, experimentation, deductions, creation, and such. These days, after tinkering with his origin, Maximus created an independent learning consciousness. This independent learning consciousness is separate from his usual thinking consciousness. No matter how much time passes in this independent learning consciousness, he would not be eroded by time. Meaning, he is no longer restricted when it comes to comprehending knowledge. As long as his consciousness can take it, his independent learning consciousness can study without stopping. Now he is finally free. Besides important breakthroughs in his realm and experiments, he no longer needed to work personally. With free time on his hands, Maximus began to indulge in beauty. Of course, Maximus was not too indulgent, wasting his wives' time. Maximus also began to teach them rigorously so they could break through earlier. The knowledge in his mind isn't just decoration. With one look, he can identify their weaknesses and deficiencies, and correct them at the same time. Especially with the combination of the pseudo-primordial origin physique he copied from Lilith. With him as their teacher, their progress skyrocketed multiple times. Having such a leisurely time, a smile couldn't help but creep up to his lips.
A year later.
This should be enough, Maximus muttered. Inside his storage dimension was a universe of books. For every piece of knowledge he studied, there was a printer dedicated to inscribing it. The endless amount of knowledge in his storage dimension even attracted a bit of energy from the river of knowledge. Although he didn't know what effect it had on his storage dimensions or the books, Maximus was sure it was a good thing. Satisfied with his work, he opened his shop in Myriad World Mall. Dimensional Origin Library. Tier 8 books, 32 trillion. Tier 7, 819 trillion. Tier 6, 18 quadrillion. Tier 5, 57 quadrillion.
Tier 4, 98 quadrillion.
Tier 3, 107 quadrillion. Tier 2, 132 quadrillion. Tier 1, 251 quadrillion. Tier 0, 351 quadrillion. Total, plus 1 quintillion books. Yearly income. Average of 75 quintillion every year, in decline? It's not as much as I thought. Looking at the list of books in his shop, it was lower than he thought. He had expected a quintillion Tier 0 books, but seeing it didn't even reach half, Maximus was a little shocked. However, thinking that he had too few system points in the past, he understood. Because there weren't too many system points, what he studied was targeted. Besides knowledge related to creating the Origin Cultivation Manual, all he studied were professions of his interest. Furthermore, he didn't go too deep into it. As long as he studied enough, he would move into the next tier. No wonder I earned too little. Thinking that his son could earn a few septillions every year just from selling resources of the Ethereum realm, he couldn't help but sigh. Yeah, the new generation is really better than the last. Fortunately, it was his son, or he would have been disappointed in himself. Thinking about it, a smile appeared on his face. He would only proud of his children, not the other way. The system, categorize the books and input them into the Dimensional Origin Library, Maximus commanded. With his order, his shop underwent a major update. It no longer listed every book by tier but by specific category. From each profession, fighting styles, elements, law, quality, tier, difficulty, etc. Furthermore, an additional 10 quintillion books were added to the list. Dimensional Origin Library. Tier 8 books, 320 trillion. Tier 7, 1.5 quadrillion. Tier 6, 829 quadrillion. Tier 5, 1.3 quintillion. Tier 4, 2.9 quintillion. Tier 3, 2.5 quintillion. Tier 2, 1.1 quintillion. Tier 1, 1.2 quintillion. Tier 0, 1.4 quintillion. Total, plus 11 quintillion. Now that's better, Maximus muttered with a smile. Furthermore, this is not the limit. With his independent learning consciousness studying over 1 billion epochs every day, Maximus could add billions to trillions of mastered knowledge every day. I wonder how much this would add to my income. Although Maximus was no longer short of money, he still yearned for more. Greed seemed to be embedded within him. No matter how much he earned, he yearned for more and more. As for the source of his wealth, it was the condensed system points. By now, with over 100 quintillion in population and hundreds of trillions of guild members residing within the Moonlight Empire, the amalgamation of will he received every day skyrocketed from 30 quintillion to over 10 sextillion. Maximus could only spend about hundreds of quintillion system points every day, meaning over 9 sextillion were getting stockpiled in his system every day. Now there are over 350 septillion points in his system. Remembering that he nearly got expelled from the Ethereum realm for a mere 50 septillion points worth of energy, he couldn't help but sigh. With such a large amount of points, no matter what he did, he couldn't spend it all. After all, the limit of his system is only at tier 10. Not wanting to see wasted resources, Maximus condensed it and let the Myriad World Mall convert it to dimensional coins. Dimensional coins are also made of bits of origin of law, thus the conversion rate is 1-to-1. As for independently selling it, he was prompted that he couldn't sell origin law treasures, which are equivalent to tier 10 items. Maximus needed real name authentication, thus needing the Myriad World Mall to be updated. Not ready for such a change, Maximus had no choice but to suffer a loss and convert it directly to dimensional coins. As for directly selling it to the Ethereum realm, being the enemy of the whole Ethereum realm once was enough. His little body couldn't handle the second round. Chapter 369: The Path Toward the Apex. A year later, Maximus was lazily lying under the sun as his wives fed him some fruit. Opening the Myriad World Mall, a smile appeared on his face. Dimensional Origin Shop. Yearly income, 650 quintillion plus. Finally, 3 stars.
3 stars?
What 3 stars? Isabella asked, seeing him so happy. Nothing, it's my shop in the Myriad World Mall, it's reached 3 stars. Really? They asked in disbelief. As far as they knew, their son Lux's shop was only at 2 stars. Although it had sextillions of yearly transactions every year, it's only 2 stars. Hearing that their husband's shop is already at 3 stars, they couldn't help but be shocked. Yeah, Maximus nodded confidently. How much do you earn every year? Sky asked like a money fan. Just a few hundred quintillion. It's so low. They thought that for Maximus to have a 3-star store, its yearly transactions would reach hundreds of sextillions or even septillions of dimensional coins. This is gross income, I don't spend anything, Maximus explained, seeing their expression. Unlike Lux, who competes on quantity and prices, Maximus mainly sells quality. To keep prices low and quantity high, Lux might not even earn 100 quintillion dimensional coins in gross profit. I see. They nodded in understanding. With joy on their faces, they couldn't help but be more enthusiastic in serving him. Knowing they wanted some gifts, Maximus was not stingy and generously bought them what they wanted. After finally coaxing his wives, Maximus reviewed the benefits of a 3-star shop. The benefits are mainly 5 things: popularity, status, unlimited credit, upgraded permissions, and a personalized virtual store. Popularity is more exposure for his shop than lower-star shops. Status adds prestige and trust to the quality of his products. Unlimited credits allow him to borrow from the transdimensional bank an unlimited amount of credits. Upgraded permission allows him to manipulate his shop more in depth. If a 2-star shop allowed him to categorize his products into precise groups, then a 3-star shop allowed him to add various permissions, hidden clauses, conditions, services, etc. Finally, the personalized virtual store is a physical shop granted to him by the transdimensional organization in the virtual world. Unfortunately, besides popularity, status, and added permission, he couldn't benefit and use the other 2. For him to access the transdimensional bank and virtual world, Maximus would need to update the Myriad World Mall to the full version, which means exposing the Ethereum realm coordinate. Maximus no longer had worries about the hidden dangers of the Myriad World Mall. The dimensional origin library is already separated from him, with fake coordinates. The reason he didn't want the coordinate of the Ethereum realm to be exposed too early is that he wanted to maximize his benefits. After all, as one of the few owners of this transdimensional platform, the benefits he receives were astronomical. From reselling to exporting, the profits every year are not something he can just let go of. More importantly, he could imagine the reaction of the apex sovereigns he fooled with overpriced resources. Seeing Maximus made a fool of them, they would surely tear him to pieces. Thus, unless there is an absolute need, Maximus wouldn't expose the Myriad World Mall without reaching Tier 9. Without absolute strength, how dare he face their wrath? Thinking of this, he couldn't help but speed up his progress to reach Tier 9. Tier 8. 1.3%. Unfortunately, looking at his pitiful progress, he couldn't help but frown. At his current pace, he needed at least 1,000 years to advance. Thinking of a solution, he grabbed a piece of Abyss Merit Crystal and absorbed it. Plus 0.00000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000 abyss crystal merits to fill his missing energy. TSK, this is insane. As far as he knew, Lux, Liam, and Isabella only used tens of sextillion abyss merit crystals to advance to tier 9. This is still because they used a castrated version of Origin. For others to advance to tier 9, no matter how solid their foundation is, they only needed a few sextillions. 100 septillion abyss crystal merits to advance? Where could he find that? Putting it out of his thought, he tried to use the Ethereum realm merit. Plus 0.0000000000000000000000000001%. It's the same. Because both are part of the origin of a dimension, the energy contained in them is the same. What about amalgamation of will? Absorbing a unit of amalgamation of will, a surprise appeared on his face. Plus 0.000000000000000000000000000001%.
Is this possible?
Thinking about it, his cultivation manual is of ultimate quality. How can it be limited to the type of energy it can absorb? Mocking his stupidity, he couldn't help but laugh. Living for so many years, he became affected by the preconceived notion of this world. From magic crystals, power of law, essence of law, and special treasures. His thoughts were locked to these types of energy, limiting his ultimate cultivation technique. As a technique that delves into the origin, how can it be limited by energy? From electricity, kinetic energy, gravitational energy, void energy, etc. Maximus tried all of it. Not to his surprise, It was able to fill his missing energy. However, after a bit of deliberation, he crossed all the other energies and focused on the amalgamation of will. Although he could use any kind of energy, it was not as efficient and abundant as the amalgamation of will. Among all the energy he could use, void energy had the highest conversion rate, only needing 1 septillion units of energy to fill his realm. Unfortunately, it wasn't easy to extract. If he had that time, it would be better to absorb his naturally generating mana and power of law. Although slow, he didn't need to do anything and just wait 1,000 years. On the other hand, the amalgamation of will had a slightly lower conversion rate than the crystal merit, requiring 100 octillion units to fill his realm. With over 100 quintillion population and hundreds of trillion guild members, he receives 10 septillions units of amalgamation of will every day. Reserving 1 septillion for his comprehension of knowledge and daily expenses, he can still save 9 septillion. Saving over 9 septillion units of amalgamation of will every day, he only needed 30 years to fill his realm. After the conclusion, an uncontrollable excitement passed through him. Having a huge population is indeed the way to go. 30 years? After 30 years, he could advance to Tier 9. Suddenly Maximus thought of a problem. While the amalgamation of will is a panacea that could help him shorten the time to fill his energy from 1,000 years to 30 years, it's also a curse that prevented the past Holy Emperor from ever advancing. I wonder why this is? Maximus frowned. Without knowledge about the way forward, Maximus didn't know where to start. Suddenly, he thought of Fialon. This father-in-law of his should know something. Taking out a contact token, he called Fialon. Soon a projection of Fialon appeared before him. What do you want, brat? Fialon snorted, not liking Maximus's face. I just want to ask about the previous holy emperors. What prevented them from advancing to the apex? Maximus asked with a wry smile. Didn't I just take one of your daughters, what's the fuss? He thought internally.
The holy emperors? It's simple.
They didn't reach the apex because they are weak and untalented, Fialon said carelessly. Then how could I advance, father-in-law? Maximus asked straightforwardly.
What?
Fialon's eyes widened, looking like he would kill him on the spot. I mean, Dean, how could I advance? Maximus lowered his posture like a bullied son-in-law.
This is simple.
Satisfied with Maximus's polite tone, Fialon quickly explained his conjecture. Amalgamation of will is the will of people. Mastering them is only the first thing. The most important step is to unify them. To unify the chaotic will of people, there are 3 requirements. A container that could contain the chaotic and ever-growing will. An indomitable will to be impervious to the influence of the chaotic will. Finally, a heavenly comprehension to experience and understand the chaotic will. What do you think? Do you have these qualities? Fialon asked, squinting his eyes. Although he was sure that Maximus was not so simple, he was still worried that his daughter would be left a widow. There is no problem, father-in-law, Maximus said with a smile.
You.
Hearing Maximus calling him father-in-law again, Fialon flared. Goodbye, father-in-law. Before Fialon could speak further, Maximus cut him off. Ha ha ha, soon I'll make you personally call me a son-in-law, Maximus laughed. Hearing the 3 requirements, he no longer had any worries. He already thought of the container, that is his origin. To contain the ever-growing chaotic will of people, what's a better place than his origin? Even the river of law barely affects it. How can a mere amalgamation of will do so? As for an indomitable will, he didn't need it. He had already created and separated an independent learning consciousness. No matter what happened there, it wouldn't affect him. This was a bottomless abyss that could swallow billions of epochs worth of knowledge every day. As for comprehension, it's just a matter of spending a few system points. Solving his worries, a smile appeared on his face.
Soon.
Chapter 370 The Chaotic Star Sea Plan. 30 years later. In a Tier 10 training room, Maximus freely released his newfound power without holding back. Testing his output, attack power, defense, and recovery, Maximus estimated the enhancement of his power. 1,000-fold? Maximus pondered.
Maximus Shadowcrest.
Tier 8. 100%. Power of Law. 100%.
Essence of Law. 118, proficient.
Amalgamation of Will. 2.67%. System points. 13 septillion points. As he observed his progress, a smile appeared on his lips. After over 30 years, he finally advanced to peak Tier 8. Now, The only missing element to advance to Tier 9 was to unify the amalgamation of will and, more importantly, the 9th chapter of Origin. To unify the amalgamation of will, the chaotic will of the people, Maximus needed to personally experience their entire lifetime. After all, how could he guide them if he hadn't personally experienced their joys and sorrows? Although there are other ways to unify the amalgamation of will, this was the fastest he had found. To personally experience the lifetime of each individual who believed in him, whether alive or had passed away, he only needed system points. The average lifetime of an individual in his empire is about 700 years, with over 100 quintillion plus the tens of quintillions who had already died. Maximus only needed over 100 trillion epochs, or about 40 octillion system points, 60 octillion less than to fill his realm. After testing his limits, being a peak Tier 8 enhances his individual learning consciousness to comprehend about 100 billion epochs of knowledge each day. Therefore, with enough system points, he could unify the amalgamation of will in only 3 years. Unfortunately, it's only an estimate. The amalgamation of will he gets each day is only worth over 10 septillion system points, far from the 36 septillion system points needed to achieve his upper limit. Furthermore, the former apex sovereign of the Nexus continent, the thugs of the Moonlight Empire, were a deep pit. These people had tens of trillions of epochs of life experience. With 11 of them, he needed to experience an additional 300 trillion epochs of life. Thus, even with his current acquisition rate of system points, Maximus would need 50 to 60 years to unify his amalgamation of will. However, this is not the end. After unifying the amalgamation of will, he would need to create the 9th chapter of Origin. To create it, he needed to master 18 essences of law present in the Ethereum realm to transcendence. This is the hardest part, needing hundreds to thousands of years. Seeing that he was still far from reaching the apex, Maximus only smiled. I'm not in a hurry. My strength is enough. With his current strength, except for those ancient apex sovereigns who mastered some origin of law in advance, no one was his match. Thinking that he needed more amalgamation of will, he sighed again. Previously, he thought that 10 septillion units of amalgamation of will per day was already a lot. Now, to achieve his current upper limit, he needed 36 septillions of it. What about reaching Tier 9? Hundreds of septillions? Hundreds of octillions? Hundreds of nonillions? Shifting his thoughts about the unknown future, he focused on the present. It's time to launch the chaotic Starseed plan. A few months later, a piece of world-shaking news was announced in the Empire. In the grand manner of the Nova family, the Patriarch, a Tier 8 powerhouse, trembled as he read the news. The chaotic Starseed plan. This chaotic Starseed plan is a pioneering decree of the Holy Emperor. Each Tier 8 individual, regardless of nationality and status, could apply for a moving island from the Moonlight Empire. This island served no other function than the capability to float in the chaotic sea. It might seem insignificant, but this function is heaven-defying. Aside from a continental land, Tier 9 ships, and special treasures, nothing could traverse and survive in the chaotic sea. Even an apex sovereign needed special treasures to protect their body from the chaotic energy. Chaotic energy is the residue, the primal energy left from the conception of the Ethereum realm. It is theorized that this chaotic energy surpasses even the Ethereum realm itself. Thus, its mystery and allure are irresistible. Unfortunately, even though he was almost at the peak, reaching Tier 8, he could only catch a glimpse of the mystery of the chaotic sea. Now, according to the chaotic Starseed plan, they could obtain land equivalent to a Tier 9 ship. Reading the clause, besides various taxes, obligations, and mandatory specifications, a land that could cross the chaotic sea was completely free. Furthermore, as long as one had enough money and contribution points, one could expand the land to the size of a continent. Father. His son called, seeing him in a daze. Should we apply for a land, father? Does that even need to be asked? This is an era of hegemony, the era where the Nova family shall rule. While the top forces in the Moonlight Empire were in a frenzy, the other 3 continents were shocked by the news. In the Ethereum Realm News app, a blazing post was pinned on top. Billions of trillions of Tier 8 powerhouses read the news filled with doubt and excitement. The chaotic Starseed plan. A plan that could flip the world upside down. In the Arcane Continent and Divine Continent, one needed to reach Tier 9 to have their personal territory. Now, an emerging empire from the most barren continent dared to propose the same benefits? This is giving them an island comparable to a domain seed that could float in the chaotic sea. Although they were in doubt, most of the Tier 8 forces were filled with excitement. From the ancient to the present, who wouldn't want to own a personal territory? The territory where they can make their own rules and customize to their wildest imagination. They had long been dissatisfied with their current status quo. After fighting for their life in the abyss and surviving to advance to Tier 8, they're still weaklings who need to follow others. Due to the strict rules in the world where supreme power rules, they felt shackled as if they were mortals. Although what they enjoyed was incomparable to the past, how could it be enough? To reach their current realm, how could their appetite be so small? Their greed and ambition were not something a mere continent could contain. They needed something bigger, grander, an infinite space that could contain their greed and ambition. The chaotic sea, the immeasurable sea of the Ethereum realm, just whetted their appetite. With doubt and excitement, they hurriedly applied for a quota. In Moonlight Empire, Imperial Castle. Maximus quickly sifted through the list, using system points to digest their information rapidly.
Is so many.
Maximus muttered with joy and sorrow. He was happy because if all of these people joined his plan, he could almost gather all the Tier 8 individuals in the world. This means he would receive an amalgamation of will beyond his imagination. Unfortunately, it's not possible. How could those apex sovereigns allow him to poach their people? After those Tier 8 powerhouses left, what would be left in their territory? Who would earn them wealth, resources, and faith? Even with the help of Fialon and Malgrin. If those apex sovereigns became crazy enough, they could just destroy the Curse Continent before he could react. Furthermore, everything needed balance. He didn't have enough resources and manpower to accept all these powerhouses into his empire. Maximus needed to choose meticulously, considering their capability, wealth, resources, manpower, etc. The Tier 8 individuals he chose must be those who had a huge foundation that could thrive on their own. Even the people in his empire, Maximus couldn't choose arbitrarily. If they died in the chaotic sea, the one losing would be him.
Yeehaw.
What is this? As he was choosing individuals from the 4 continents, he noticed an apex sovereign from the Beast continent. He didn't expect that even an apex sovereign would be tempted by him. However, thinking about it, it's understandable. The Beast continent was the 3rd smallest continent in the Ethereum realm. Furthermore, the supreme primordial beast, Alabaster, owned the entire continent. Unlike in the Arcane continent and Divine continent, where they were given their personal territory after they reached Tier 9. In the Beast continent, even if they reach Tier 9, besides the land for their clan, they don't own anything. Initially, with the invincible strength of Alabaster, no one dared to complain. However, seeing the opportunity presented before them, they couldn't help but reach out. Unfortunately, I couldn't take you now, Maximus muttered, shaking his head. He was already having a headache about where to get the system points to experience hundreds of trillions of epochs of life of those former apex sovereigns. How could he add another deep pit? Moreover, accepting these apex sovereigns is only making an enemy of Alabaster. Maximus would be putting the cart before the horse if he accepted them. Giving them a private message, he silently erased their names from the list. There will be a time in the future.